Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Christina, for the introduction. It's an honor for us to be here at XinFin for our talk here about asset tokenization, which just so happens to be at the core of XinFin's core mission, which is to build and to help facilitate infrastructure finance. And so when we talk about public infrastructure, it really is about the governments providing everything from rail, roads, ports, water treatment facilities, and energy power plants. But to do this, most of the governments are funded by their treasuries, fund these projects through their treasuries, which is often limited by the amount of tax revenues and tariffs that they can collect for these projects. And with rising deficits and financial accountability with the projects from private banks and so on, it makes it harder for them to finance infrastructure. So is there a way that governments can be able to build the infrastructure that they require without burdening the government treasury, still allow private sector and private capital to participate? And we believe there is. But this requires a new way of thinking. And then so with that, you know, we looked at how we can deploy these solutions for governments and for businesses that makes that possible. And with that new way of thinking, there's a quote from our Buckminster Fuller that helped us out a lot so that we don't have to spend a lot of time training a new way of thinking. We provide a tool, and that tool in itself allows for the reorganizing how they plan infrastructure projects, how they finance infrastructure projects, and at the end of the day, it allows them to create new and innovative ways to do that. So what we're talking about here is the XDC-01 protocol. This is our own code that we built from first line, but it was originally a mashup between the ERC20 Ethereum token and JPMorgan's Quorum, and mashed together, and that allowed for us to be able to provide both a public and a private blockchain. This allows for the transparency as well as the speed for the public chain, but also allows for the privacy and the protection of data and assets. So we've launched with commercial enterprises, and this has allowed us to deliver an enterprise-grade solution for everything from private blockchain networks, supply chain, travel industry, invoice factoring. But I'll be spending most of this time talking about TradeFinex, which is our own app. But before I do that, I just wanted to let you know that some of the showcases of the technologies and the companies that we have worked with, and so our corporate clients that are using it to finance solar farms with IoT integration, setting up private networks, land and supply chain, land and supply chain for a leading ERP company, and a matter of fact, even with peer-to-peer smart contracts for online travel portal. And my flight here was actually booked on one of these blockchain platforms. So there's a real-world use case for you. But also for the governments, everything from land to vehicle registries, and then fractional ownership of assets on the blockchain, which I'll be spending the rest of the time talking about. So when we talk about asset tokenization on the hybrid blockchain, we're really talking about the benefits of fractional ownership. And those would be the economic models around asset ownership, as well as the ability to allow for diversification of risk, and then newer models for raising capital, and that leads to being able to use tokens to finance product development and project development. So with those benefits in mind, we looked at one of the largest global challenges, which is the global infrastructure deficit and gap. And then with that, we're looking at, by the year 2030, that will need private capital investment that would need investment of $68 trillion in public infrastructure projects. That's going to be quite hard for governments to be able to finance themselves, but we've looked at an asset class, and we've looked at a category of investor that can be able to satisfy that demand, and that is global public investors. So think pension companies or pension funds, but also sovereign funds, insurance companies, and treasuries. But just speaking about, and that also represents about 33.8 trillion in investable assets. But when we talk about pension funds, they also have 78 trillion in pension obligations that they need to make. So a report that came out through OMFIF, which is a think tank for the sector, showed that just among the GPI community, they need to raise, they're very interested in continuing to invest in infrastructure, and of the 70%, they all looked that they wanted to do that, but all of them, none of them will decrease their investments. The problem is they're more satisfying their fixed income portfolios, so they don't really look at new projects, and only 25% do that. So we were looking at a way that we can allow more private capital from the GPI community to participate at the early stages of a project. So with that one, we partnered up with that global think tank that I mentioned before that came out with this report, the Official Monetary and Financial Institutions Forum, where that represent this $38.8 trillion community, and they have expressed the need for private capital, for sustainable asset class, and for using blockchain in order to deliver that. But they said, provide this wish list, and if you can do that, we will invest more into private capital. So that was de-risking infrastructure project finance, lowering the transactional cost, standardizing contract instruments, and incubating and accelerating the infrastructure pipeline of new projects to make them bankable for later acquisition, track these infrastructure asset performance data as they're in production or in operation and generating the revenue, and create an exchange to trade those infrastructure assets. So that's what we did. We think tanked it, and we tech tanked it, and came up with a sandbox solution, and we call it TradeFinX, to deliver exactly that. And then TradeFinX platform, as a first enterprise grade platform to do this, allows for the collaboration between beneficiaries, suppliers, and financiers to come together and to build out these projects. And we've streamlined and automated the workflows from planning, procurement, contracting, repayment, and then payments throughout the platform, using our XDC token, which does two things. First, it serves as a hedge pool, because in project finance, there's so many things that can go wrong, and this serves as a contingency fund in order for anything from commodity price fluctuations, currency changes, contracts, legals, permits, so that hedge pool covers that. And the XDC token also is linked to smart contracts that are enforceable throughout the stages of the process. So with that one, we were able to demonstrate a way and create a platform that allows private sector investment to crowd into the space. So instead of just one major investor investing in one major project, now that same large investor can invest in multiple different projects at an exposure level that's appropriate for them, along with other co-invested, syndicated, and crowd-funded investors, migrate the infrastructure onto the blockchain, so that automates the entire process from the planning, procurement, contracting, and finally the financing workflows. And we've allowed for the true tokenization of infrastructure as an asset class, a very intangible and a very tangible and liquid and almost illiquid one before, but now being able to offer it in it's more of a fractional way. At the end of the day, what this is allowed to do is to be able to create infrastructure that can be bought in any size, traded, held, and sold at any size as well, and really create a marketplace for infrastructure as an asset class. So we've already demonstrated this with the financing of a solar farm, IoT integration, and we are actively bringing on projects, working with governments, working with corporations, working with suppliers and beneficiaries to roll this out even more. So if you're looking for to finance your infrastructure project or looking to come on board, we welcome you to go ahead and do that, but also to connect with us if you have solutions that you think that an enterprise-grade blockchain could solve, and we will do a discovery with you. So I want to thank you for your time, and enjoy the rest of the conference. Cheers.